Okay, so in this video we finish off, in part 12, we finish off the loading and saving of data, which is our enrolments. Okay, so now we can load the enrolments in file and save them to file automatically with our course and student data. Okay, so that's what we do in this video. Please stay tuned and let's get going. Okay, so let's get going. First thing we're going to do is update the version number, so I don't leave that till the end this time. So I'll open that scene. And we're in part 12, so I'll change it to 0.12 and save that. Control S to save and exit. I don't need to go in there again. And so now we're going to do the load and save for enrolments. So let's start with the easier version, which is saving the enrolments, and then we'll come on to the slightly harder, and it's only slightly harder version, which is loading enrolments. Okay, I'm going to do all that in the enrolments add controller because that's where our array list is declared. Okay, and like I've been saying in prior videos, the ideal thing to do here would be to create an array list of courses class, so array list of course class or course array list class, and a student array list class and an enrollment array list class, and put all the code for loading and saving array lists in there, put the array list in there, put the code for searching and sorting array lists in there, and anything you need to do, put all that code from your controllers into the array list classes. And if you can, the ideal version of that would be to try and create a generic array list class so that you could do all your processing generically for all of your data types. Although that might be a bit too difficult. It's a bit of a long bow, and putting all your processing in there might be a bit tricky. But certainly file save and load might be doable. Okay, you might be able to do a generic array list class for file save and file load, maybe. Okay, and if you need to add methods elsewhere to help that work, and interfaces and implement interfaces to make sure methods are implemented, then that's something you could do as well. Okay, so it might be a little bit more work, but it might save your code. You can shrink your code down. Okay, let's get going. We're in the enrollments add controller, and this is where the array list is declared. So let's just go and grab the code to save and load the code to not that one. The code to save and load courses just for now. Okay, so we'll grab that code that we wrote to load and save courses, and we'll copy that because that's a good starting point, and we'll paste that into our enrollment controller, and we'll go right down the end like we do with all of our new code. We're adding it right to the end, and we're going to import those. Yes, thank you NetBeans, that's great. We need to add a file name at the top, a static field file name, and we'll do that. So enrollments, the add controller, load that file name at the top there. I don't like doing it right at the very top. And I'll call this one enrollments. Enrollments. That's our file for enrollments. Okay, so far so good. So save enrollments to file. We'll go through and change everything to enrollments first. Enrollments to file. And load enrollments from file. Enrollments from file, uppercase E. Enrollments, yeah, that looks all right. And we're using a formatter again, file, and for each enrollment, and I'll call it E, in our enrollments array list. Enrollments array list, okay, that looks fine. And we want to go through E, and we want to go toString with line breaks, okay, which is a method we need to add. Okay, file could not be found, file cannot be saved, so we're getting those messages still, that's fine. Load enrollments from file. While in file.has next, we're now creating an enrollment. Enrollment E equals new enrollment, and we need to fill in these parts, because that's not right coming in from file, is it? Unless we add more functionality into our enrollment class. But, okay, we'll think about that. And so it's enrollments array list. Enrollments array list dot add E. E's our enrollment, but I'll comment that out for now. Okay, we're still going to work on this. This is something that we're going to have to work on. If there's an exception or a file not found or whatever, that's all the same. That's all fine. It's using a generic file name from the top of the class, or the static file name. Sorry. Okay, so when we write out an enrollment to file, we just want to save the IDs. We're going to assume student ID is unique and doesn't change. Once a student's been allocated an ID, it should never change. And also we're going to assume course code is unique. Not course name, but course code is unique. Okay, so for each enrollment pair, we should have to just save the student ID and the course name. And we're going to save student ID on one line and course name on the next line. And then student ID on the next line and then course name on the next line. That's how we're going to save our file. Okay, and so to help us with that, we're going to write this method toString with line breaks. And it's just the same as what we've done so far, so we'll copy that, go into our enrollment class, scroll down to the end just before our toString method, public string ring, toString with line breaks. We're not overloading this one because it's not in a superclass, and we're going to return. Okay, so each enrollment consists of a student object and a course object. So for the student object, we want to save their ID, so we need to go get stud ID plus a new line, plus for the course we want to get the course code. We're going to assume course code is blank, is unique. Dot get course code. Get code or get course code? Was it get code? It might have been get code. Yep, get code it was. Just make sure. Let's go to the class and have a look. Get code. Yep. Okay, so get ID, get student ID, and get code, plus a new line. Okay, so that's our toString with line breaks. That's all we need to save enrollments to file. Okay, for each enrollment, we're going to save the student ID and the course code. Okay, so we've got the objects stored here, or the references to the objects, the student and the course, but we're just saving their IDs. The unique identifiers for student and course. Okay, and I'll just put a note in here that assume code is unique, and we should really be enforcing that as well, and that could be a subject for a future video. So I might even write a little to-do here. To-do, make sure course code is unique. It's not a bad idea to write yourself little notes in your code, put to do there, then you can just search for to-dos. Some IDEs actually let you, as well as seeing all the windows in here for outputs and whatever, there's a to-do window which keeps all your to-dos automatically listed there for you, which is really nice. And Visual Studio Code does that, and a couple other ones I've used. Eclipse does that as well, I'm pretty sure. So this version of NetBeans doesn't, unfortunately, but maybe you have to tag it properly. I don't know. I haven't looked into it for NetBeans. Okay, so we've got the saving done. Now we need to do the loading. Loading's slightly trickier. Back to our course add controller. Go down to the load method. Okay, so for each course, was not course. Sorry, not course add, enrollment add. Okay. So we're talking about load enrollments now, and so what we need to do is load the student ID in, and then find that student, and keep that student object so that we can pass it through to the enrollments constructor, and do the same for course. Okay, and we could put the loops in here to find the student for the student ID and find the course for the course code. Or we could even move those loops into the course and the student classes to loop around until we find them, or somewhere else. We'll just do it in here for now. We'll keep the code in here for now, so it's all in one place. Okay, so the first bit of data coming in from file is the student ID as a string, so we need to convert it to an integer. Int stud ID is equal to so it's coming in as a string, so infile.next line comes in as a string. That's going to, we assume that's a student ID, and we're going to say integer.parse int, so we're converting the string to an integer. Okay, and if that fails, we're going to have an exception down here. We're going to have course exception, or rather than say file cannot be loaded, we could even say invalid data. That could be a better message. Okay, so it's the exception you get when you convert data, which is a legal argument, I think it is. Hang on. Sorry, number format exception. So if this string is not a valid integer, it'll throw number format exception. So we could even catch that down here. In fact, file cannot be loaded. Bad data, invalid data. File cannot be loaded. So we can catch that here as well. So number format exception, or, okay, so single vertical bar. So number format exception or course exception, this catch handles it. Okay, and we'll get a message saying invalid data, file cannot be loaded. Okay. And I think that's probably enough. I don't think we need to show the error in 2 dialogues. I think 1 dialogue's enough. In fact, we could even tack that onto this message. So we've got the file name coming out. Okay, and just to include that error.get message, we could go +/n/n plus error.get message. So everything's coming out in 1 dialogue. So Java's internal error message is coming out, plus that we're saying invalid data, file cannot be loaded. Okay, that's the best way to do it, I reckon, rather than display 2 dialogues. Even though this should be super rare, should only be if the file's corrupted. Something's damaged the file on disk or whatever, or you've got bad code, one or the other. So we might even change all our dialogues to do that as well in our loads. So instead of having the 2 dialogues, we'll make it just 1. So we'll make that change as well. So it's course add. So there's the 2 dialogues there. We just put 1. Yep. We don't need that. I shouldn't have said yes to that prompt. We're using our file name, it's local here, so that's all right. So back to the load. So we're going to copy that also to our students. So we're not displaying 2 dialogues there. Even though, like I say, these conditions should be super rare where your file's corrupted. In the good old days of computers, when I moved onto a 10 megabyte hard drive, I was reformatting nearly every day because of data disk errors. So, but those days are long gone. I mean, and delete those 2. So it's just 1 dialogue there with all the information, invalid data, could not, and the error message as well, which could be student name cannot be blank, or course code cannot be blank, or whatever the error message is. So that's good. Back to the enrollments. So we've made that change to student add fxml controller, the course add fxml controller. We've tidied up that dialogue, so it's not 2, it's just 1 now. And also in enrollments, we're working in there as well, so it's just 1 dialogue. Oh, I don't want that. That one. Okay, so we've got the student ID. Now we need to look up the student for that ID. So let's loop through all students for, I'll do a counter control loop, but it could be a for each loop as well, or whatever, an enhanced for loop. K equals 0, K is less than, now we need the students array list, which is in our students add controller. That's our chap there. Back to so it's students array list, but it's our students add controller. So we've got our students add controller dot students array list, and we need the size of the array list, size, and then K++. So we've got a counter control loop there going through all items in the array list. Okay, and if the student ID that we're looking for is equal to the 1 at that position in the array list, sorry, I'm going to just copy that. Control C equals that dot get stud ID, and we need a dot get in there, get K, dot get student ID, get K. Okay, so we're comparing the student ID that we're searching for, which is this chap. We're comparing it to all the ones in the array list, so it's students array list dot get K to get that item in the array list, dot get student ID to get the student ID. So if they equal, then we've found a match, and we could say, well, first of all we need to create a student object. So student s equals null, set them to null, and down here we found a match, so we can say student S equals that one. Okay, so we're getting the one out of the array list and setting it to the student, or let's call it student, a slightly better name than S. One letter names are a bit bad. Okay, a bit lazy. Counter controls are fine, but yeah, okay. So student equals that one that we've found, and now we want to stop searching. We've found a student, so let's stop searching, so we're going to exit the loop. So let's say K is equal to the upper limit. Okay, and that's because we're exiting the loop. Okay, so manually set K to something that violates our conditions on our loop. We keep looping while K is less than, so set K equal to, and our loop will exit. We're not searching anymore. We found the student. Okay. Now we have to do the same thing for course. Okay, so let's get the course code from the file. So string course code is equal to, and it's just in file.nextLine, in file.nextLine. Okay, we're reading the next line of data from the file, and that's got the course code on it. And now we need to loop through all course codes and see if we can find a match. So let's do that. And we'll create a course, lowercase course equals null. So we're setting them to null, and then we'll try and find a match in here. So with courses, we're searching through the course add controller. That's where the course array list lives. Doop. Oops. Doop. Doop. So we changed all those controllers across course add controller because we're doing courses now, because that's course add controller, and it's not student array list, it's course array list. There it is, courses array list. As you can notice, I like copying and pasting rather than retyping. Course array list, course array list, course array list. Okay, we're not comparing IDs now, we're comparing course codes. Okay, course code, and it's get course. Okay, and of course the thing with strings is you can't compare them like that, can you? You've got to use dot equals or dot compare to, or one of those string compare methods. You cannot use double equals because that's comparing memory addresses, not data. Okay, so dot equals, and if that equals that, and if that's true, okay, so I'll just show you what's over here. So if course code dot equals, I'll make it equals ignore case. So we're doing case insensitive compares, even though the case should be the same because it's just data saved to file. We'll put equals ignore case anyway, just to make sure. So if course code dot equals ignore case, the course in the array list, get course. Why does that give me an error? Get course. What's it? Oh, get code. Sorry. Course code. Get code. So get code. If that's true, then we've found a match. So course equals that one in the array list, and we're going to exit the loop. That's cool. So now at the end of these two loops, student will either be a student object or it'll be null, and course will either be a course object or null. So now we can just create an enrollment with our student. Let's have a look at our enrollment constructor. Okay, we pass through a student object and a course object. Okay, so let's do that. Student object is stud, and course object is course. Okay, so we're passing those through to our constructor, and if any of those are null, an exception will get thrown, and these catch statements down here will catch that. Okay, and we'll get some sort of error message come up, course exception, and we'll get this error coming out on screen, which is great in a dialog. Okay, so let's add the enrollment to our array list, and everything's fine. Okay, now we don't need to show the message that the file was loaded successfully, so we'll leave that commented out. I don't think we need that. That'll just annoy the user if dialogues are popping up saying file loaded okay, file loaded okay, file loaded okay. I think that'll drive the user crazy, so we'll leave that commented out. And I think we're ready to go. So just a quick recap. So with save enrollments, with save enrollments, we created a formatter object. For each enrollment in our array list, we outputted them to the file. And we used for each enrollment E in our array list, we said E.toString with line break, which returned all our data, our student ID and course code separated by new lines. Okay, very simple save. The loading was a little bit more complicated because we're loading in student ID and course codes, and we had to find a course for the course code and a student for the student ID, so the student object and the course object. And once we'd found those, we could create an enrollment and add that enrollment to the array list. Okay, and again, we're relying on exception handling. We're just passing the data through to constructors. If there's any problems, they'll throw exceptions, and we'll catch those here. Okay, that should be it. We're ready to test now. So the first thing I'm going to do is delete the data files, because I need to just run out test data, add test data one more. Oh, actually, I didn't need to. I didn't need to. No, let's leave those as they were. So I press Control Z to return them. That's all right. We can type in enrollments again or add the enrollments again. That's fine. So no errors. Let's display students. There they all are. I didn't want to lose Hank and Pedro. See, so and display courses. There's the courses. Let's display course enrollments. There's 5. Whoops. Do you know what we've done? We didn't change the file name. Oh, yes, we did. Enrollments, okay. So how do we end up with 5? Okay. I don't know why that's saying 5. Let's have a look at our file. Okay, so let's go through and have a look. So there's our courses, F5, F5. So there's no enrollments coming out here. Students is fine. Student ID, name, phone number, email, that's all fine. Courses, that's beautiful. So our data files are right. So I wonder, and enrollments aren't being saved. Oh, of course they're not being saved. I haven't called the methods. You're probably screaming that from your comfort of your home lounge there, wherever you're watching from. I need to call these methods, don't I? So load enrollments has to be called in the startup, in a start method. So it's that, and we need to go, it's enrollments add controller that's got that method. Okay, so we're loading courses, loading students, loading enrollments and file. Doesn't matter what order. Well, it doesn't matter what order for those two, but the enrollments must be added last because we're looking up student IDs and arrays and array lists, course codes and array lists. So that's definitely got to be last. Okay, and for the saving, we need to do that in the exit, which is in iExitable, and we just go down here and we'll save those last as well. Dot. And I'll get the method name to save me trying to remember what it was because it's getting late at night now. It's anyway, I'll get to sleep one day. Save enrollments to file. That's the one we want. Dot save enrollments to file in iExitable. Okay, let's see what we get now. Compile. Display all course enrollments. 5 enrollments. Display courses. There's 3 courses. Display students. There's 5 students. I've got a feeling I'm using the wrong counter here for display all courses. So I need to check that. Let's go to display all controller. Sorry, enrollments. Enrollments display. And down here, and of course, there it is. There's the error there. So I'm looking up the students array list to see how many enrollments there are. It should have been the enrollments array list. So let's go and grab that. So it's in that controller. And the array list is called enrollments array list. Okay, so I don't need to import that. No. Cancel. Don't need to import that at all. Okay, so I had to put enrollments controller dot enrollments array list. I could have just got it there as well. Okay. So that's going to display the enrollments now. So let's fix that little bug. And let's move on. Let's display all courses. There's 0 enrollments found. Perfect. That's better. Let's add an enrollment. So it's going to be Moose in that course there, and we'll add them. That's added. And we'll add Frankie to that course and add. And also add Frankie to that course and add. And we'll add Pedro to that course, that final course there. And we'll go add and return to menu and display course enrollments. And there's the 4 enrollments we've added. So Pedro's in that course, Frankie's in those 2, and Moose is in that one. Okay, so that's all working great. And we want to have a look at our files. So let's have a look at our files. And we've got courses. Perfect. We've got students. And that's looking great. I can see there's ID, name, phone number, email. That's all great. And the enrollments. So it's student ID, course, student ID, course, student ID, course, student ID, course. That's working beautifully. Okay, so that's pretty well it for this video. Just a quick recap. So we've now got it so all our enrollments and students and courses are being loaded from disk. Okay, loaded from file. So we can now delete our test data button or hide it. We can hide it or delete it. We might need it again later when we're adding more stuff into the application that we want to test. So for now, we could just hide that button. We could go into the SceneBuilder. Let's do that. So we're going to SceneBuilder for the main menu. I'll just resize it so you can see it. And we'll click that button. And somewhere in here, there's going to be a visible. There it is. So we'll just make it so it's not visible. And that'll hide that button. It's still visible. Okay, so it's... I thought it just would have been... Gee, it's gone. Okay, so... Wow. We can get it back down here. There's the test data button. So we'll make it visible again, but we might disable it for now because we might want to use it again in the future. So let's find where it's disabled. Disable. There we go. So it's still there, but it's disabled. I might move it down a bit so it's not in the headings as well. Control S to save, and let's just run. And everything's working great. Display enrollments. Display courses, beautiful, display students. Okay, so that's it for this video. Hope that was useful. Thanks for watching. So what can we do in future videos? What can we do? Well, the big burning thing for me at this stage, with our code the way it is if we wanted to make this application a console app, okay, we don't need all this controller stuff. Controllers don't apply in, well, like they can apply, but we don't have initialize methods in console apps. Implements initializable doesn't apply to console apps. It doesn't apply to swing apps. It doesn't apply to AWT GUI apps or swing GUI apps. This is only for JavaFX. So there's a lot of JavaFX contained in these controllers. And if all we're developing is JavaFX apps, that's fine. But if we wanted to use this code or the bulk of this code in other apps as well, so we've got console app version, a swing app version, AWT app version for some reason, and whatever, a web app version, then maybe we want to look at moving a lot of this code out of the controllers and into array list classes like I've been talking about. So maybe an array list of courses or a course array list class, an enrollment array list class, and a student array list class. And maybe we could look for similarities in those codes and maybe try and make use of generic methods and generic classes to help us streamline some of that code. So if I did more parts of these videos, that's probably where I would head. Okay, and get students thinking about reusability and generic classes, generic methods, so things can be reusable for any type of data. That's probably where I'd head. But I'd for now, unless there's great demand, I'll leave it here for the video tutorial series, And so I'd encourage you, the viewer, to explore generic classes, generic methods. See if you can make an array list class that deals with courses, students, and enrollments, and saves the data to file, loads the data from file, and that sort of thing. Okay, so you might need to move some processing perhaps out of here. For example, hint, hint. You might need to move enrollment add controller, save, load. Double clicking on the file and it wasn't coming up. I thought I was going mad. So, for example, if you wanted to make this generic, this wouldn't be appropriate in all the classes, for all the types of data, course, enrollment, and student. So maybe you might want to move that to one of the other classes. Maybe move this to the student class, or maybe another class, or maybe have lookups. Lookup student, lookup course, and only call those when you need them. Anyway. I think we've got about as far as we need to go for this series anyway. When you start getting into generics and things like that, if you've got to spend hours thinking about something to save 5 lines of code, you've got to ask yourself, is it worth it? And if you're making those 5 lines of code more complicated, is it worth it? So anyway, the app we've got now works beautifully. And so if you've joined me all the way through to this part, I want to say thank you for joining me. And hope it's been fun. And keep up the coding and keep up the hard work, and you should do really well in your career, hopefully. Okay, so all the best to you, and take care. Good luck. Thanks for watching.